I loved the way the water fell in this image, and we'd like to use it as a background. So I'm going to start by removing this distracting area here at the bottom and in the corner. I'll use my lasso tool and make a rough selection, always finishing in a circular motion. And then I'll choose Edit, Fill, and leave it on the default Content Aware. When I click OK, magically, virtually seamless, there's new water droplets. Let's try it over here. A very rough selection going all the way down around the image into the dark gray area. And now Edit, Fill, Content Aware, click OK, and click once outside to deselect. Only you and I will know that there was ever anything here to begin with. So now we're ready to make this a pattern and have type rise up through this pattern. So I'll start with Edit, Define Pattern. And it picks up the file name, which I'm happy with, so I'll click OK. I'll hit the letter T to jump to my type tool, or you can click the type tool, and I'll click once anywhere on the image, and just type water. I'll double-click to select the text, and I'll go to Myriad Pro for my font. I'll choose bold, or if you have black, which is thicker, that might be nice for this. I probably have a lot more of Myriad Pro than you do. I'll just choose bold. That should ship with the Creative Suite or the Creative Cloud, so everyone who owns Photoshop should have it. And I'll use the scrubby sliders, these two T's, to make the word water bigger. I'll move my text over and down, just visually placing this. Now, here's the cool part. In the Layers panel at the bottom are FX, and years ago they were called Effects. I remember FX for effects, but technically today they're called layer styles. And when I add a layer style, I need to do something to give this text depth or dimension. So I'm going to choose Drop Shadow. And when I choose Drop Shadow, a lot of people don't know that with this dialog open, I can click and drag right on the text to move the shadow. But I like to keep my shadows very subtle. So I will slide up size and reduce the opacity. So it gives it a little bit of depth, but it doesn't jump out at you that there's even a shadow there. Next, to give the text rise so you can see the water droplets in the word water, I'm going to choose Bevel and Emboss. And it's important to click on the words Bevel and Emboss. If you are on Drop Shadow and you simply checked the box, the settings do not change from Drop Shadow. But if I highlight the words Bevel and Emboss, now I can choose Inner Bevel, Emboss, Pillow Emboss, Stroke Emboss, or Outer Bevel. I'm going to leave it on Inner Bevel or Emboss, whichever you like better. I could make the depth a little higher for a thicker emboss. I could play with the size, really crazy there. But if you want a special effect, you can go really nuts. I like subtle effects, so I keep my size very small, and you can soften the edges a little bit more. It's your call. Feel free to experiment. You could also try the direction of the emboss up or down, down looking like it's more into the metal that the water droplets are on. Now here's how you get the text rising up through the image. I'm clicking the Words Pattern Overlay. Remember not to just check the box. Clicking the words checks the box for you and shows you the patterns that you have. In the pattern dialog, when I hit the arrow, the last pattern in the list is my water. Now I've got the water rising up through the word water, and this text is still fully editable. But there is one caveat. If I click OK, and I switch to my Move tool and move the word water up, it's not picking up this line. So I will double-click on Pattern Overlay in the Layers panel, and I will snap to origin to reset this. It's important to uncheck Link with Layer. When you uncheck Link with Layer and click OK, now when I move the water, everything behind it stays still. And it looks like my origin didn't kick in, so I will double-click Pattern Overlay, hit Snap to Origin again, and there, it picked up the spot. Link with Layer stays off, and I could play with the opacity, how opaque the pattern is, to give the color a little bit of a ghost effect. You could also do an overall color overlay. If you wanted the water in a different color, I could leave the opacity solid and choose Color Overlay, and I'll try a blue. So where I see red, I'll click once, click in the blue family, choose a lighter or darker shade of blue, anything you would like. When I click OK, to see the water in the word water highlighted with blue, I'll slide the opacity down. And there we have some color to this. So when I click OK, I've added all of these layer styles, a bevel and emboss, a color overlay, a pattern overlay, which puts the water that was our pattern in the actual pattern, and a drop shadow. Now, if I had no drop shadow and no bevel and emboss, I can just get a tint of water in the word water, but I could do that with type by itself. I could lighten the opacity on the type. In fact, if I remove the color overlay, you wouldn't see anything because the pattern was made from this image and they're both in the same position. So I always add at least a drop shadow, which is an interesting effect for kind of subliminal messaging, and a bevel and emboss. But often I finish off with a color overlay. And this is making type rise up through an image by using layer styles, which I always remember FX for effects.